Ama. Está andando pelo passeio do canal que divide a cidade. Algumas barcaças navegando lentamente nas primeiras horas da manhã. À esquerda está a passarela de inspiração náutica com tábuas estilo convés e torres tipo mastros. À direita está a curva do rio que se volta para o leste depois da ponte Waterloo, em direção ao dono de Catedral St. Paul. Ela sente o sol começar a se erguer. No ar ainda uma brisa antes de a cidade ficar entupida de calor e fumaça. Uma violonista toca alguma coisa devidamente inspiradora mais adiante no passeio. A peça de Ama, a última amazona do reino de Daomé, estreia no Teatro Nacional essa noite.
Chegou um ponto em que os habitantes de Marte não podiam mais negar o aquecimento do seu planeta ou a escala da destruição que estava por vir. Em uma última tentativa desesperada de preservar sua civilização, eles construíram vastos canais conectando os polos do planeta à grande extensão de terra arrasada que cobriu o resto da superfície. O degelo anual das camadas de gelo polares produziria a água necessária para o cultivo de alimentos suficiente para a sobrevivência de pelo menos mais uma geração.
Educação indígena. A educação na aldeia indígena começa desde a primeira idade. Não segue os padrões de sala de aula. É um aprender sem pressa na solidariedade. Aprende que a agitação da formiga e o canto do sapo indicam que a chuva vem aí. Aprende a apreciar desde pequeno um bom peixe assado com vinho de açaí. Aprende que na arte de pescar só se pesca o que vai precisar. E a calma é importante para a flecha no peixe acertar. Aprende com os mais velhos, nossa memória viva, com os espíritos conversar e deles a permissão receber para na mata entrar.
Eu não tinha porra nenhuma pra fazer lá. Quer dizer, por que será que moro com a minha ex-namorada, sua nova namorada e a ex-namorada dela? Como é que alguém pode se sentir bem assim? Eu poderia estar escrevendo essa história de uma cela de cadeia. Engraçado, né? Ted e Alice, antes da minha partida, disseram: nada é tão ruim que não possa piorar ele. Eu não sabia mais o que fazer. Peguei um voo sim, eu fiz isso. Pra Portland. E a Julie e a Cris me buscaram no aeroporto. Eu estava muito doidona no avião.
Encontrei ela ali, hoje de manhã, de barriga para cima. Revelou Dona Elodia, indicando um ponto na praia onde se juntava o lixo que o mar trazia ou desenterrava. Troncos, sacolas plásticas, garrafas. Envenenada? Acho que sim. O que fizeram com ela? Enterraram? Dona Elodia fez que sim com a cabeça e disse: meus netos. Lá em cima, no cemitério? Não, aqui mesmo, na praia. Muitos cães do povoado morriam envenenados. Havia quem dissesse que eram mortos de propósito, mas Damares não podia acreditar que existissem pessoas capazes de fazer algo assim e achava que os cachorros comiam por engano as iscas com veneno deixadas para os ratos, ou comiam os ratos, que por estarem envenenados eram caçados com facilidade. Sinto muito, disse Damares.
O imenso moedor está triturando animais mortos recolhidos nas estradas. Tanto o barulho do motor quanto dos ossos sendo esmagados ricocheteiam nas paredes altas do galpão. A mistura de som e fedor enfurece os sentidos. Edgar Wilson deixa o carrinho no lugar delimitado por um retângulo pintado no chão e sobe os degraus de uma escadinha de alumínio que dá acesso à caçamba do moedor, de onde é possível ver o lado de dentro. Consegue ver o que é? Grita um funcionário afastando o protetor auditivo. Não estou vendo nada, grita de volta Edgar Wilson. Desde cedo tá assim, agarrando. Mas não estou vendo nada.
Sobre o autoritarismo brasileiro. Lilia Moritz Schwartz. Demorei aqui, Escravidão e racismo. No Brasil, o sistema escravocrata transformou-se num modelo tão enraizado que acabou se convertendo numa linguagem com graves consequências. Graçou por aqui, do século XVI ao XIX, uma escandalosa injustiça amparada pela artimanha da legalidade. Como não havia nada em nossa legislação que vetasse ou regulasse tal sistema, ele se espraiou por todo o país, entrando firme nos costumes da terra. Imperou no nosso território uma grande bastardia jurídica, a total falta de direitos de alguns ante a imensa concentração de poderes nas mãos de outros. Fim.
Se alguém for um espírito guardião, mandado pela primeira vez para habitar um hospedeiro que veio ao mundo em Umoniá, uma cidade na terra dos grandes pais, a primeira coisa a surpreender o espírito seria a imensidão da terra. Quando o espírito guardião desce, com o corpo reencarnado do novo hospedeiro em direção à terra, o que se revela ao olho é assombroso. Subitamente, como se alguma cortina primordial fosse aberta, estamos expostos a uma extensão de vegetação verde e luxuriante.
Quando retirei a faca da mala de roupas, embrulhada em um pedaço de tecido antigo e encardido, com nódoas escuras e um nó no meio, tinha pouco mais de 7 anos. Minha irmã, Belonísia, que estava comigo, era mais nova há 1 ano. Pouco antes daquele evento, estávamos no terreiro da casa antiga brincando com bonecas feitas de espiga de milho colhidas na semana anterior. Aproveitávamos as palhas que já amarelavam para vestir feito roupas nos sabugos. Falávamos que as bonecas eram as nossas filhas, filhas de Bibiana e Belonísia.
um apartamento em Urano. Em termos biológicos, afirmar que são necessários um homem e uma mulher para levar a cabo um processo de reprodução sexual é tão ridículo quanto eram, em outros tempos, as afirmações de que a reprodução só aconteceria entre dois corpos que partilhassem a mesma religião, o mesmo sangue, a mesma cor de pele ou o mesmo status social.
Da mesma maneira que, enquanto estamos presos, não cremos na vida livre, que não podemos esquecer. Uma vez soltos, esquecemos a coerência interna da vida na prisão, de cuja realidade, no entanto, não duvidamos. Hoje sei que saí, venho saindo da prisão como quem sai de um sonho. Ao passo que, enquanto preso, eu julgava que Santo Amaro, o solar da fossa e a TV Record é que tinham sido um sonho do qual não era possível sair.
Às vezes você fazia um pensamento e morava nele, afastava-se. Construiu uma casa assim, longínqua, dentro de mim. Era esse o seu modo de lidar com as coisas. Hoje, prefiro pensar que você partiu para regressar a mim e não queria apenas a sua ausência como legado. Eu queria um tipo de presença, ainda que dolorida e triste. E apesar de tudo, nesta casa, nesse apartamento, você será sempre o corpo que não vai parar de morrer. Será sempre o pai que se recusa a partir.
Quando o menino tinha 4 anos, ele perguntou ao pai por que as pessoas precisavam dormir. O pai respondeu: para que Deus conseguisse desfuder tudo que eles fuderam. Quando o menino tinha 12, ele perguntou à mãe por que o pai tinha ido embora de casa. A mãe disse: para poder fuder com tudo que passar pela frente. Quando o menino tinha 13, ele quis saber por que o pai tinha voltado para casa. A mãe respondeu: eu tenho 41, eu não estou afim de ficar procurando alguém para fuder. Aos 14, quando os palavrões pareciam jorrar da boca dos amigos feito água num cano furado, a palavra foda não exercia nenhum fascínio sobre o garoto. Nenhum pingo.
Firme, não suporto o chão de seus fundamentos. Tô de saco cheio de chamar tua imprudência de lei. Cada noite conto meus irmãos, e pela manhã, quando alguns não sobrevivem para serem contados, conto as covas que deixaram. Estendo a mão ao povo preto e toco apenas o ar, seu truque de mestre, América. Ora ele respira, ora não. Abra cadáver, macumba para turista, feitiço que alega não praticar. Dá logo uma pistola ao meu primo para fazer o trampo por vocês. Eu tentei, gente branca. Tentei, branquelos, mas passaram o funeral do meu mano fazendo planos para um cafezinho, falando alto demais ao lado de seus ossos.
Ama está andando pelo passeio do canal que divide a cidade. Algumas barcaças navegando lentamente nas primeiras horas da manhã. À esquerda está a passarela de inspiração náutica com tábuas estilo convés e torres tipo mastros. À direita está a curva do rio que se volta para o leste depois da ponte Waterloo, em direção ao dono de Catedral St. Paul. Ela sente o sol começar a se erguer, no ar ainda uma brisa antes de a cidade ficar entupida de calor e fumaça. Uma violonista toca alguma coisa devidamente inspiradora mais adiante no passeio. A peça de Ama, a última amazona do reino de Daomé, estreia no Teatro Nacional essa noite.
Chegou um ponto em que os habitantes de Marte não podiam mais negar o aquecimento do seu planeta ou a escala da destruição que estava por vir. Em uma última tentativa desesperada de preservar sua civilização, eles construíram vastos canais conectando os polos do planeta à grande extensão de terra arrasada que cobriu o resto da superfície. O degelo anual das camadas de gelo polares produziria a água necessária para o cultivo de alimentos suficiente para a sobrevivência de pelo menos mais uma geração.
Educação indígena. A educação na aldeia indígena começa desde a primeira idade. Não segue os padrões de sala de aula. É um aprender sem pressa na solidariedade. Aprende que a agitação da formiga e o canto do sapo indicam que a chuva vem aí. Aprende a apreciar desde pequeno um bom peixe assado com vinho de açaí. Aprende que na arte de pescar só se pesca o que vai precisar. E a calma é importante para a flecha no peixe acertar. Aprende com os mais velhos nossa memória viva, com os espíritos conversar e deles a permissão receber para na mata entrar.
Eu não tinha porra nenhuma pra fazer lá. Quer dizer, por que será que moro com a minha ex-namorada, sua nova namorada e a ex-namorada dela? Como é que alguém pode se sentir bem assim? Eu poderia estar escrevendo essa história de uma cela de cadeia. Engraçado, né? Ted e Alice, antes da minha partida, disseram: nada é tão ruim que não possa piorar ele. Eu não sabia mais o que fazer. Peguei um voo sim, eu fiz isso. Pra Portland. E a Julie e a Cris me buscaram no aeroporto. Eu estava muito doidona no avião.
Encontrei ela ali, hoje de manhã, de barriga para cima. Revelou Dona Elodia, indicando um ponto na praia onde se juntava o lixo que o mar trazia ou desenterrava. Troncos, sacolas plásticas, garrafas. Envenenada? Acho que sim. O que fizeram com ela? Enterraram? Dona Elodia fez que sim com a cabeça e disse: meus netos. Lá em cima, no cemitério? Não, aqui mesmo, na praia. Muitos cães do povoado morriam envenenados. Havia quem dissesse que eram mortos de propósito, mas Damares não podia acreditar que existissem pessoas capazes de fazer algo assim e achava que os cachorros comiam por engano as iscas com veneno deixadas para os ratos, ou comiam os ratos, que por estarem envenenados eram caçados com facilidade. Sinto muito, disse Damares.
O imenso moedor está triturando animais mortos recolhidos nas estradas. Tanto o barulho do motor quanto dos ossos sendo esmagados ricocheteiam nas paredes altas do galpão. A mistura de som e fedor enfurece os sentidos. Edgar Wilson deixa o carrinho no lugar delimitado por um retângulo pintado no chão e sobe os degraus de uma escadinha de alumínio que dá acesso à caçamba do moedor, de onde é possível ver o lado de dentro. Consegue ver o que é? Grita um funcionário afastando o protetor auditivo. Não estou vendo nada, grita de volta Edgar Wilson. Desde cedo tá assim, agarrando. Mas não estou vendo nada.
Sobre o autoritarismo brasileiro. Lilia Moritz Schwartz. Demorei aqui, Escravidão e racismo. No Brasil, o sistema escravocrata transformou-se num modelo tão enraizado que acabou se convertendo numa linguagem com graves consequências. Graçou por aqui, do século XVI ao XIX, uma escandalosa injustiça amparada pela artimanha da legalidade. Como não havia nada em nossa legislação que vetasse ou regulasse tal sistema, ele se espraiou por todo o país, entrando firme nos costumes da terra. Imperou no nosso território uma grande bastardia jurídica, a total falta de direitos de alguns ante a imensa concentração de poderes nas mãos de outros. Fim.
Se alguém for um espírito guardião, mandado pela primeira vez para habitar um hospedeiro que veio ao mundo em Umoniá, uma cidade na terra dos grandes pais, a primeira coisa a surpreender o espírito seria a imensidão da terra. Quando o espírito guardião desce, com o corpo reencarnado do novo hospedeiro em direção à terra, o que se revela ao olho é assombroso. Subitamente, como se alguma cortina primordial fosse aberta, estamos expostos a uma extensão de vegetação verde e luxuriante.
Quando retirei a faca da mala de roupas, embrulhada em um pedaço de tecido antigo e encardido, com nódoas escuras e um nó no meio, tinha pouco mais de 7 anos. Minha irmã, Belonísia, que estava comigo, era mais nova há 1 ano. Pouco antes daquele evento, estávamos no terreiro da casa antiga brincando com bonecas feitas de espiga de milho colhidas na semana anterior. Aproveitávamos as palhas que já amarelavam para vestir feito roupas nos sabugos. Falávamos que as bonecas eram as nossas filhas, filhas de Bibiana e Belonísia.
um apartamento em Urano. Em termos biológicos, afirmar que são necessários um homem e uma mulher para levar a cabo um processo de reprodução sexual é tão ridículo quanto eram, em outros tempos, as afirmações de que a reprodução só aconteceria entre dois corpos que partilhassem a mesma religião, o mesmo sangue, a mesma cor de pele ou o mesmo status social.
Da mesma maneira que, enquanto estamos presos, não cremos na vida livre, que não podemos esquecer. Uma vez soltos, esquecemos a coerência interna da vida na prisão, de cuja realidade, no entanto, não duvidamos. Hoje sei que saí, venho saindo da prisão como quem sai de um sonho, ao passo que, enquanto preso, eu julgava que Santo Amaro, o solar da fossa e a TV Record é que tinham sido um sonho do qual não era possível sair.
Ministério do Turismo e Associação
Ministry of Tourism and the Casa Azul Association present the 18th FLIP, the Paraty International Literary Festival. Project is benefited from the federal law on incentives for culture, Body Mais culture, and with official sponsorship by Itaú Bank, with the support of the Paraty municipal government, Pinheiro Neto attorneys, and you all. It's organized by the Casa Azul Association, the Special Secretariat for Culture, the Ministry of Tourism of the Brazilian federal government.
Esta mesa terá a duração.
This roundtable will last 1 hour, and it was taped ahead of time. Exceptionally, there will be no questions from the audience, thus at the end of the broadcast. So we wish you all a wonderful flip.
Sejam muito bem-vindos,
You're
Marcelo.
all welcome, Marcello, Fernando, to the 18th flip. This is the Zach Kleber roundtable. Here we're in the alley called Beco do Propósito. I think that we're properly distanced from each other so we can take off our masks. So this space in the traditional alley, it's an emotional place for the local community in Paraty. Fernando Alcantara and Marcello Alcantara, who are born and raised here in Paraty, are sharing and reclaiming the culture of the Festival of the Divine, and also bring your fiddles. You can tell me how we call your instruments, your fiddles and so forth, but I'd like for you to introduce yourself. Tell us who you are and how you found the Ciranda. It's the circle dance. I'm Fernando Alcantara. I'm a young Caiçara, local descendant of the local fishing. I was born in this alleyway connecting the Mother Church Square to the post office. We're in this alleyway here. It was like the backyard to my house. I was always playing here on the street with my friends, and I grew up as part of this culture in Paraty, always participating. When I was a kid, I was an altar boy in the church, so I was part of the traditional festivals and took part in them when there was Ciranda, the old timers that danced the Ciranda and played the music. When I began to work and I got my first wages, I bought my tambourine and I began to play this instrument. And later on, I met Marcello. I've known him since I was a kid, although I'm younger than he is. And I reconnected and we got together and we created a young people of traditional Ciranda musicians. Ciranda is a circle dance and danced on the seaside. Were there other groups? They were more like modern versions of Ciranda. We wanted the traditional part of our old timers taught us. They had this rural exodus. They came to town to live in the town from the rural exodus, and we're a generation that was born here in the town. In the town, we weren't born out on the farms, but our they were suffered real estate pressure. And my older brother Felipe, he was part of the Electric Ciranda group, which is a group which of young people who did a new version with electric instruments, and the master elders wanted to teach the young people the traditional Ciranda music because they were seeing these new characteristics, but they didn't have the youth who were dedicated to the traditional culture of the Ciranda. So we decided to follow their advice. And you, Marcelo, I'd like you for you to, your grandfather was a master Ciranda musician. You're from the community. Can you tell us a little bit about your own story? My name is Marcello Alcantara. I'm 39 years old, and I'm from a Caiçara family. Caiçara, the descendants of the traditional communities. I learned of Ciranda through my grandfather in my time when I was a kid, because the elder Ciranda musicians, they wouldn't let the kids touch the instruments. It was a rule. You couldn't touch their instruments. It was like a disrespect. Couldn't even come close to their instrument. But I started playing the viola when I was 9 years old. The Festival of the Divine and the Ciranda chords, and I learned the basics. And when I met Fernando, he was somewhat younger than I am. And when I met Fernando, when we organized our Ciranda group of the young Ciranda musicians, I had the opportunity to learn Master Amédio, where I learned the Festival of the Kings. I met other master elders who were friends of my grandfather. They still play Ciranda. They're elderly gentlemen, and I have learned from them to this day. And you're a young master Ciranda musician. I'm not a master musician yet, but who knows in the future? Maybe I'll become one. We want to be modest, right? He taught me, so he's like a master musician. I didn't know much musical theory. I just picked it up by ear, basically, and trying to by trial and error until I met Marcello, and I learned some musical theory, and I learned in the practice as well. And this sharing now, you are going to the schools, talking to the young kids. Marcelo, in the past, if you couldn't even touch the instruments, today you let the kids touch the instruments. It's the opposite today. I want to let the kids feel free to have this first contact with the instruments. Perhaps in the future they're going to remember that they had contact with that instrument. They may want to learn themselves how to play the instruments. What's the difference between Ciranda here in Paraty and Ciranda Caiçara and Paraty and the Cirandas around Brazil? So it's spread around Brazil. Ciranda, there's several different regions of Brazil. Each place has its own characteristics in the Ciranda. It came here with the Portuguese settlers, and it was adapted to each territory, some for the Maroon communities and some for the Caiçara, the fisher villages, and the indigenous village. And here, it's part of the Caiçara community here, ever since the Ilha Grande Bay into Santa Catarina. It's the Caiçara territory. They're descendants of the old fishing villages. They're similar practices, but they use different terms here. We call it Caiçara, Ciranda, Ubatuba, southward to Paranaguá on the coast of Paraná. You call it Pandelo Caiçara. So Caiçara music, it's a music that's played in this coastline. This Ciranda talks about this territory, the customs, the population here from Paraty talking about fishing and farming, subsistence farming. It happened when one neighbor went to, as a like exchanging favors. Did you have a Ciranda party? That was how it is. People used to do juntório, which is like a collective of people who do help their neighbors with the harvest of the sugarcane or manioc or pulling in the fishing nets. So people came from the community and they all joined together, and the payment was a dance. People came to help me pull in my fish net, and we'll pull in the fish net. So the payment for the people was a dance at my house with all the songs, the Ciranda songs, and at the end of the evening, which is the daybreak, was they'd had breakfast with sweet potato, banana, plantains, and manioc, which is traditional breakfast here, and sugarcane, coffee made with sugarcane juice. And after this big breakfast, people all went home, and this collective helping neighbors, they're gonna have a barn raising. They give a barbecue for those people, and people are still doing things that way, joining together. And it was samba today, but Ciranda is still alive after these traditional parties. We have here the Festival of the Kings, Festival of the Divine, Saint Benedict. When do these festivals happen? We're in the space where these festivals actually happen. All of these festivals, these parties that you mentioned, they're played. The music is played by the Ciranda musicians. The Festival of the Kings sent the Holy Cross, and the Festival of the Divine with the viola. Can we see the instruments? Let's see the fiddle called Rebecca in Portuguese. It's the main instrument. It's like a square drum. It's a square drum, not the Festival of the Kings. It's the Saint Benedict and the Festival of the Divine. It's on December 8 up to January 20, Saint Sebastian, and the visit of the wise men. They're like the wise men or the kings, the three kings. They visit the manger scenes in the houses, and after the festival of the three kings. And what about Saint Benedict? The festival of Saint Benedict is in November. It was supposed to be happening right now in the month of November. And it's a similar festival to the Festival of the Divine. There's a coronation of a king and queen, like in the Festival of the Divine, there's the coronation of the boy emperor, who's a young person who's chosen from the town. and they free a prisoner. And this festival of Saint Benedict is the festival of the divine of the black people. They coronate a crown, a king and queen. And the festival of the divine, you talked about Saint Benedict, the festival of the divine. The Ciranda musicians play this like a sung prayer. The verses are sung to music. The divine, they come to, there's an orator, you have to sing praise to the person saint, that you walk along the paths, trails, they walk along the paths, and they reach a place which you can no longer walk, so they take a canoe, a dugout canoe, and they visit the rest of the community. And over the course of about 50 days, which is from Easter Sunday to Pentecost, this festival, it travels around the town. But there's a time of the year that you don't play. When is that, Marcelo? It's in the Lent. We play the Festival of the Three Kings on the 17th, is that it? January 16th is the last day of the kings, the wise men. Saint Sebastian King. After Saint Sebastian, that's when they stop playing for 40 days until Carnival, until Saturday. Hallelujah Saturday. Let's see how the Festival of the Kings is.
Oferecer tesouro, grande prêmio de valor, entre cento e ouro, brilhante aurora, de madrugada, nasceu Jesus da Imaculada. Essa é uma toada da Folia de Reis.
This is a song from the Festival of the Kings by deceased Amélio Weiss. He's gone from us now, but this space, this is where this Holy Cross, Santa Cruz. What's the story about the chapel right behind us here? Is the chapel of Santa Cruz Generosa. In the month of May, there is a festival here, a celebration, and generally after, it wasn't 10 days like the Festival of the Divine here. It's a smaller festival, only 10 days long, and after this song, the Mass on the last day, after the Mass that's said in the church, there's a Ciranda dance here. In the Ciranda dance, we convene all the Ciranda musicians, the masters and the elders and the younger musicians, everyone here, even from Ubatuba and Angra dos Reis, they become people who come here to join in the festivities and to participate in this Caiçara dance here. Let's hear, let's play, and our generation of Ciranda musicians, myself and Fernanda, we're continuing what the elders did. This festival here is important for us to continue with the tradition, as strengthening and reinforcing the memory and tradition. This practice of holding these. Let's hear the music to see, and we'll come back and continue with our conversation. The Caiçara tradition, their descendants, many of Portuguese and indigenous fishing villages that have occupied the coastline of southeast and southern Brazil for several centuries.
Tá começando a ventar, já tá querendo a chover, remando nessa canoa morena. nossa cama na varanda, esqueci do cobertor. Deu vento na roseira, encheu minha cama de flor, remando nessa canoa morena.
Que lindo, gente.
That was beautiful. Strong lyrics. We feel the living presence. We have a banner over there, the Festival of Santa Cruz Generosa. It's a banner of Santa Cruz Generosa. It's on the mast of the ship. How high is the ship's mast? 6 meters high. It's on the top of a 6-meter mast right next to the chapel. And this mast, as long as it's standing here, that means that the festival is going to happen. And it's a beautiful festival here in this very site. And I've participated ever since I was a little kid with Marcello and everybody here from this traditional alleyway. You could tell us a little bit about this and reclaiming the guardians of the memory. What's important of being the custodians and guardians of the memory? That's our legacy and heritage. It doesn't just depend on me. We have Marcel and Fernando, who maintains his family's culture and maintaining the chapel, keeping the chapel and preserving it for everything to happen. We combine our music that Marcello does here with maintaining the chapel, this little chapel behind us, the litany, and all of this forms this beautiful heritage that we have, this cultural heritage. And it depends on these people to keep it alive. It's an immaterial heritage, but it's as important as it's our immaterial and material heritage. The music, the litany, and the chapel depends on this group, this circle of people to be able for this to happen and to continue alive, to keep this memory and this tradition alive. Otherwise, if people stop, if the Ciranda and the litany stops, the festival won't happen anymore. It'll just be history. And another thing is that you reclaimed and recovered the fiddle called Habeka. We say Habeka. It's a fiddle. After 40 years, you brought and reclaimed the fiddle again. Can you show us your Habeka? The Caissara fiddle called the Habeka. This instrument is made, it's handcrafted. It's made with cacheta, a lightweight in mangroves. It's kind of wood, that's lightweight wood that's found in the mangroves here. And it's banned to harvest it. It's protected against development. But sometimes they fall down and we pick up the trunks. This cacheta wood is on the list of trees that are threatened with extinction, but they manage this raw material. They prune the tree, and the tree 10 branches grow back where you've pruned it. And if you don't prune it, the wood will rot. And in the 1990s, it was included on the list of a species in extinction. And caiçaras were even blamed because caiçaras just do the sustainable management where we have real estate development projects that are destroying the mangroves. We only use the wood. We don't make an instrument every day, after all. And how do you do that? Marcello brought it to show us. This is a fiddle that I'm building myself, but it is made as if it were like a dugout canoe, a single piece of wood called the dugout fiddle. So it's done with a form, a mold, then you shape it on the outside, and the finishing of the arm, you just do a lid. How long does it take to make a dugout fiddle like this? If I work straight, it takes about 2 months or a month and a half. But this here, I've been working on it for a year already. When you show it to the kids in the school, other kids, they get excited, curious. They're curious. We go to the schools on the coastline and in the town itself, and a lot of kids, they say, My grandfather can do that. He uses the same kind of wood. They know the name of the wood. It's called cacheta. They know, so they say, "Oh, my grandfather makes little boats and canoes and things with the same kind of wood." And we're talking here about Kaisara culture. Everything revolves. The music is the final result, but we're saying that everything involves the Kaisara culture. It's the Kaisara way of life. That's why it's so important to preserve and reclaim these. And Rebecca here, the fiddles here, they were part of Ciranda and the Festival of the Divine. Zé Leonardo, who used to play this kind of fiddle, and I'll tell you how I met and I learned about fiddle. This elder, he passed away, and there were no more fiddles in Paraty. So Fernando was important in this. He reclaimed the fiddles for Paraty, because when Fernando took interest in fiddles, because he knew from the people from Ubatuba and other towns, and the elders from Paraná, Aurélio, and so forth, and Clayton and José Pereira, the other fiddle makers, Fernando took interest in the fiddle, and he learned how to make them there with the people from São Paulo and Paraná and the coastline farther south, and he brought the fiddles. I learned about fiddles from Fernando, and I like playing these fiddles. So Fernando is important in reclaiming this tradition. And now there are fiddles in the Caissara fiddles called Rebecca's. He brought this knowledge, and we learned about it. And I learned a lot with José Pereira, Clayton as well, and with Aurélio Domingues. This exchange of tradition is extremely important. We learned from other Caissara communities this and reclaimed and brought this knowledge back, and we had access to the documents here in books where they had photographs of people who used to make these fiddles in Paraty, and they're shown in the museum. And we learned actually nobody could play this kind of fiddle anymore, so we had to find the references on it. And Canané and Ubatuba, closer places to us here on the coastline farther south, and adapt it to our reality again here. Why do you think that the fiddle, there was this hiatus in the fiddle culture? Caiçaras were marginalized. They didn't go to make the fiddles, and they abandoned their interest in the fiddles. The fiddle was in the museum. We went to and took photographs of the. Where is this museum, Morro do Forte, between Pontal and Jabaquara, between these two beaches? And we went to have references for this master fiddle maker. Person here, Marcos Ribas and Raquel Ribas, recorded the way that the fiddles are made. They mapped even the records, and we had access to this as well. So today, there are fiddles all over the place now in Paraty, and you've exchanged knowledge. When you go to another state, you learn, you bring it back here. It's like a cultural exchange, right? And even though you're settled here in Paraty, had all this, took all this care to go to Paraná and to learn. How was this experience to go down farther south on the coastline to exchange experiences? And we met these people from the Caissara territory. They became like a family. Whenever we met, whenever we meet, we go there. In the festivals, in the Fandango, Caissara in Canané, and Paraty is this only one we need to strengthen. A festival, the Caissara Ciranda from Paraty. We always go to the Caissara territory, and people say, when are we going to go to Paraty? What are the challenges for us to have a Caissara Ciranda festival here? I think it depends on the community to want it, and when the community wants something, it happens, right? You can't stop them. People join together. The challenge is for us to want to hold the first one. After the first one, the first festival, I think it'll take off after that. So let's hear the fiddle. Let's fiddle. This fiddle, when we went to Paranaguá, they gave us some other instruments as well. So this fiddle was made by Aurélio Domingues from Paranaguá. He's a professional. We're still amateurs. We got a viola, and this fiddle. Adulfo, that's the name of the festival, and the fiddle are the Arabian, they're instruments. The Moors introduced these instruments into the Iberian Peninsula, and the Portuguese brought them to Brazil, so they're made differently from the tambourine. For samba, this adulfo, this is the kind of tambourine. It's made with leather as well. The wood is usually cocoa wood, and it's different from you use this one here. You tune it. Now it's stretched because we're out in the sun now. In the sun, it stretches, so it gets tighter. In the night, in the dew, you have to lean it next to the, or even the more you play it, you have to heat it up with your hands. And the fiddle gets goes flat when we play. When the sun strikes the and the percussion instruments and also the string instruments, it goes out of tune. Live and in color, in Technicolor. So you need to tune it, right? We're going to play a little bit of the fiddle for you to listen. It's interesting. It's like a duet, like voices in this Ciranda, first and second voices. And we take the songs from here. The way we sing, we play it here on our fiddles. My voice on the Ciranda, I transfer to the fiddle, and Marcello's voice. The fiddle here is an instrument that your hand moves, and your head has to think of the verse. I repeated the verse. You have to do three things at the same time with the bow. When you visit the schools, what are the first steps for the school children, the teenagers, to get used and familiar with the fiddle? The first contact is a circle conversation explaining the importance of our visiting. We explain to the students that it's our heritage from Paraty, and it's important for them to preserve this heritage. It's customs passed down from our ancestors and our families. So this is the first step, the conversation with the kids. A playful, we play with them and joke a little bit and explain, because if we show up and say, let's play Ciranda, you're going to dance. They don't want to dance. They think it's an old timers thing. And first we talk and teach them in practice, but they know the importance of this to learn this. Some of them are already familiar because of their families. Since there's the Festival of the Kings here, they come to the Festival of the Kings, and then there's the Ciranda dance and all the farm communities all around Paraty. So we always talk about this importance, and they have contact with the dance, the Ciranda dance, and this contact with the instruments. We don't teach them to play. They have, you can hold the fiddles to make the sound and see how the sound is made, to see if we spark their interest, because it's an instrument that is quite, it's like these instruments for Ciranda, you play by ear directly. It's not like you study music for them. And you, because we don't have a lot of instruments, we have to take our own instruments to be able to, we need, for example, 20 tambourines and 20 violas to be able to do something in the schools. But we begin with this dance. People who take interest in playing Ciranda, the first thing, they had to dance Ciranda first. And that's where they're learning how to dance Ciranda. They sit next to the master musician, and they'll learn from him. you study physical education. You want to include dance in phys ed, right? In phys ed, you have to teach dance in the regular classes. So in the dance part, I intend to show Ciranda dance to take advantage of the fact that we're Ciranda musicians, so we can include this in classes, in phys ed classes. And since we can work with motor coordination, fine motor coordination, I intend to teach the other part, which is what we also do, which is the traditional puppets of the Festival of the Divine, the 3 different traditional giant puppets. They're still the master puppet makers. Boy and Miota, they're made of paper mache and bamboo. They're huge. They're like the Bumba Me Boy, the ox dance in the northeast of Brazil. And here we have the ox, Miota, and the little horse is part of the pagan part of the Festival of the Divine. And we make these paper mache giant puppets. We can see how they make these giant puppets, how they're made out of bamboo and paper mache. And we invite them to come out on the street to play with the 3 giant puppets. Would you like to tell us a little bit? Miota. Miota is another giant puppet to draw this giant puppet. It's like the ones from Olinda in northeast Brazil. It's like a giant puppet. She is a gossiper. She has a strident voice, and looking at people's houses, she spreads gossip and rumors all over and this ox comes out on the street on the Saturday in the Festival of Divine. It's the time where people are having lunch in the Mother Church Square. They serve lunch to the community while the kids are chasing these giant puppets in the middle of the town square as if they're chasing that ox that's being served in that lunch. It's on the town square. It's like a narrative, right? And Fernando, you have an intersector approach to Ciranda, visiting schools in several different courses and subjects. You are studying art now. When you graduate, how do you intend to include this? What I always say is that Ciranda, you can work with Ciranda in any course in school. So Marcello was talking about phys ed and dance, Ciranda dance, and mathematics. You can only dance with even numbers in the crab dance and arts when you're making the instruments with Portuguese and literature. Because here in the Paraty schools, they study the cordel, the chapbook literature from the Northeast, and they don't use Paraty Ciranda. And Paraty is a literary town now, right? In our backyards, we're using references from the Northeast of Brazil. So it's the same amount of verses in Ciranda. It's the same metric from the chapbook literature in quartains. And so you can use it in any subject in school. It's interdisciplinary, right? Ciranda. That's the importance of Ciranda music. Ciranda from Paraty. Today, they're young people, they're kids younger than us even. Marcelo's kids play the songs, and my younger brother too. We can see this younger generation joining you. This must make you very proud, Marcelo, taking what your grandfather taught you. You pass it down, Fernando. Fernando visited neighboring communities, and now you're strengthening the Caiçara culture. This is the importance of maintaining this living culture, teaching the young people for them to teach other young people.
Pena não posso ser, o chapéu de palha eu faço, que pena não sei fazer. Tiro o chapéu, moreninha, ia, dona tirar, quero ver balancear. Tiro o chapéu, moreninha, ia, dona tirar, quero ver balancear. A viola e o pandeiro são 2 instrumentos de guerra. A viola vai fumar, o pandeiro vai por terra. Tiro meu chapéu, morena. moreninha, ia. Dona Tira, quero ver balancear. Tira o meu chapéu, moreninha, ia. Dona Tira, quero ver balancear. Meu senhor e dançador, se queira desculpar, isso não é roda d'água que roda sem a parar. Tira o chapéu, moreninha, ia. Dona Tira, quero ver balancear. Tira o chapéu, moreninha, ia. Dona Tira, quero ver balancear.
Vocês falaram do caranguejo. O que
You
é o
talked about crab. What's the crab? Crab is a circle dance. It's called the crab. Like crabs and fishing, we have our own choreography for the crab dance. Which you tap your feet, but we dance. People know it as Ciranda, which is a circle dance. People say, hey, hey, and dance in a circle. Here, there's a specific choreography for each dance of these, and the crab dance is a circle dance. But talking about circle dance, I spent a week studying, but a week that you spent in the other communities, you brought a lot people. The crab dance, are there songs for the crab dance? To dance the crab dance, everybody dances with everybody. And during the pandemic, it's impossible. Some challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic, the crab dance, you have a man, a woman in a circle, and with the refrain, foot, 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 clap, 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 circle around, crab in the dance hall. The crab jumps to the other side, and we dances around the entire circle, and it comes back to the same lady. The master musician is mapping. He guides them in the dance, the dancers, and when that boy comes back to the girl that started the circle, and that's when the music stops. I'd like to hear you play at least.
Eu já vi o caranguejo conversando com o siri. O mangue tá acabando na cidade de Paraty, olha só. Pé, 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 outra vez a mão. Roda minha gente, caranguejo no salão tá tão bom.
The circle dance called the crab dance. They're talking about how the crabs are disappearing from the mangroves around Paraty.
Que lindo, gente.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much. It's really important what you've been doing. And God willing, we'll have a lot of festivals to hear you more. And this Ciranda music, we have to keep it alive, have to be supported in Paraty, has to be safeguard for the Paraty Ciranda because culture needs support, right? This culture can only happen because the people of Paraty keep it alive. And it's not there's no law saying that Ciranda, we still don't have a law, although we want to have a law to preserve Ciranda, but the Paraty Ciranda is as important as the colonial houses and the Festival of the Divine. Ciranda is as if a bomb destroyed the town historical center. Although it's immaterial, the value is the same. The value of a church in the Caissara Ciranda from Paraty is just as valuable as the architecture here. That's why it's the colonial architecture. That's why it's important for the government of Paraty to support this and to move forward because Paraty is a UNESCO World Heritage Site because of the people that keep the culture alive here. Okay, great. Let's conclude with one more song. Let's play our farewell song. The boat that goes out to sea issues the farewell, darling, don't cry, darling, and people take their girlfriends and wives and they bid farewell. So it's the farewell song at the end of the festival. Sailing away.
Maria põe o barco na água, põe o barco na água para navegar. Maria desse barco vira teu remador para nos salvar. Ah, Maria, eu faço tudo pelo teu carinho. Naquele tempo que nós dois se amávamos, agora vou viver sozinho. A lua quando nasce por detrás da montanha nessa escuridão, até parece uma bola de prata o coração da mulata lá no meu sertão. Vem cá, mulata, eu lhe darei suspiro, o seu olhar será o meu martírio. Companheirada, tá na hora da partida, deu meia-noite, o galo já cantou. Vamos dar a despedida, vamos embora que o dia já clareou. Companheirada, já na hora da partida, deu meia-noite, o galo já cantou. Vamos dar a despedida, vamos embora que o dia já clareou. Adeus, querida, eu vou embora, querida, não chora, querida, não chora. Adeus, querida, eu vou embora, querida, não chora, querida, não chora. Essa é a despedida, adeus, adeus, querida. Essa é a despedida, adeus, adeus, querida.
Thank you, Marcello and Fernando. It was great to have you here. And there's just a Kleber roundtable in the 18th flip, and you quoted the Santa Cruz Generosa Church. We have here Marcel is a historian. He wants to enter to show us the church. Welcome, Marcel. Can you show us the church? Show us around the church called Santa Cruz Generosa. The chapel.
O meu pai não me ensinou a cantar verso pra ninguém. Era na marra, cantar verso pra ninguém. Me ensinou a cortesia pra todos me querer bem. O senhor dançador que me queira desculpar. Era na marra, que me queira desculpar. Na rima desse meu verso, viola vai aparar.